In Kibarani, a palpable sense of neglect permeated every corner. It was a neglect that went beyond mere oversight. It was a systemic failure, a deep-seated indifference that had taken root and flourished. This neglect was felt in every bone-jarring pothole, a constant reminder of the broken promises and forgotten needs. It echoed in every empty promise made by politicians, promises that evaporated as quickly as they were uttered, leaving behind a residue of disillusionment. It was a weight carried every day. The main road, the artery of the community, was a treacherous gauntlet of craters, a physical manifestation of the systemic decay. Each pothole seemed to be deliberately swallowing tires and the hope of progress alike. The local clinic, a supposed sanctuary of healing, had shelves that were tragically bare, devoid of the essential medicines and supplies needed to care for the sick. Mothers, desperate for help, were often sent away with nothing but empty words and fleeting sympathy, their anxieties amplified by the clinic's inadequacies. Yet, the nurses, the unsung heroes of Kibarani, worked miracles with virtually nothing. Their dedication a stark contrast to the surrounding despair. They performed these acts of selfless service in a building that was crumbling around them, a constant reminder of the neglect they faced. Schools were bursting at the seams, classrooms overcrowded, and textbooks tattered, mirroring the broken promises made to the children of Kibarani. The African teachers, burdened by limited resources and overwhelming class sizes, were stretched thin, their passion tested daily. Funds allocated for essential repairs and vital supplies mysteriously vanished, siphoned off by corruption. This left the children to learn a harsh lesson, that their future wasn't a priority, that their potential was being stifled by a system that had failed them. Most residents, worn down by years of disappointment, had come to accept this reality as unchangeable, a fixed and immutable part of their lives. They would often mutter, "Hii ni Kenya," a phrase that encapsulated their resignation and acceptance of the status quo. It was a phrase heavy with the weight of resignation, a quiet acknowledgement of the challenges they faced. Bribes, small and large, greased the wheels of daily life, becoming a necessary evil for navigating the broken system. And challenging the system, daring to speak out against the corruption and neglect, felt inherently dangerous, a risk few were willing to take. The brokenness in Kibarani was more than just physical infrastructure. It ran deeper than cracked roads and crumbling buildings. It was a silent tax on hope, a constant drain on the spirit of the community. In Kibarani, the insidious lesson of powerlessness was taught as early as the alphabet, shaping the perceptions and limiting the aspirations of the next generation. But in a crowded classroom where resources were stretched thin and opportunities seemed limited, Akinyi, a young Kenyan teacher with fire in her heart, refused to accept despair as the final answer. She saw beyond the challenges. She saw her students' potential, a wellspring of untapped talent and bright futures waiting to be realized. And believed silence, in the face of injustice, was nothing less than consent. It was an endorsement of the status quo. After school, seeking a space for open dialogue and empowerment, she gathered youth under the shade of an acacia tree, holding up the Bible, a symbol of faith and morality, and the Constitution, the supreme law of the land. One called for justice, for fairness and righteousness in all things. The other gave them the inalienable right to demand it, to hold their leaders accountable. Inspired and emboldened, they called themselves the Watetezi, the Defenders. They were students, eager to learn and shape their future, traders, striving to make a living boda-boda riders, navigating the streets and connecting communities, united by a shared frustration with the broken promises and a burning hope for a better tomorrow. They made flyers, simple yet powerful tools for spreading their message. Where is the money for our roads? They demanded to know. Why no medicine in our clinics and hospitals? What happened to the school fund meant to uplift the next generation? Peaceful rallies followed, a testament to their commitment to nonviolent change, reading budget numbers aloud in the market, exposing the discrepancies and demanding transparency, teaching the language of rights, empowering their community to understand and claim what was rightfully theirs. The Watetezi were awakening Kibarani, igniting a spirit of civic engagement, one question at a time, challenging the status quo and inspiring hope for a brighter future. The powerful, entrenched in their positions, didn't take kindly to being questioned. They were used to operating without scrutiny, and the Watetezi's actions were a direct challenge to their authority. Initially, officials mocked Akinyi and the Watetezi, dismissing them as naive and insignificant. But as their movement gained traction, the tone shifted. Anonymous calls began, whispers turning into threats. Intimidation tactics escalated. Harassment became commonplace, designed to instill fear and silence dissent. But Akinyi stood firm, her resolve unwavering, declaring, "We fight not people, but a system that steals from our children." Her courage, like a beacon, inspired others to find their own voice. When national media picked up their story, shining a light on their struggle, the movement spread. Youth in other towns, witnessing their bravery, formed their own Watatetsi, eager to join the cause. Peaceful protest became their anthem, constitutional education, understanding their rights and public questioning, holding power accountable, became their most potent tools. The fire that started under an acacia tree, a small spark of defiance, now burned across Kenya, igniting a passion for justice in every corner of the nation. The Watatezi's courage was contagious, a powerful force that rippled through communities, and hope, once a distant dream, was spreading like wildfire. The system, feeling threatened, tried to silence them, to extinguish the flames of change, but their voices only grew louder, amplified by the growing chorus of support. The fight for accountability had become a national call, a demand for transparency and justice echoing across the land. National attention forced action. Investigations confirmed the Watatezi's claims. Corrupt officials were suspended, and new leaders were elected by an awakened citizenry. Roads were repaired, clinics restocked, schools received new books, not as gifts, but as victories. The movement spread, inspiring youth across Kenya to demand change. Akinyi, now a national hero, declined political offers. Her mission was to teach. She returned to her classroom, her lessons now living history. Her greatest victory was changing mindsets, teaching her people their power. The fire of the Watatezi became a torch for future generations. In Kibarani, hope was no longer a whisper. It was a promise kept.